Hi, welcome back to Lamatique. Today is a bit of a DIY. These are freebies that I give out as a thank you. When somebody orders a journal, I'll put these in the box with them. This is a little notebook holder. And then it's also made so that there's a little pocket under here. And then I make these little matchbooks, which a lot of people make the little matchbooks. What I do is I put these little Ziploc baggies from the dollar store in it with different sequins and glitter and different things like that. This one has sequins and table scatter, but you could glue them in your journals and that and use them. So I was going to kind of show you the formula I use to make these so that you could make them for any little size notebook or Ziploc bags you had. So let's start with the notebook. Let me move these out of the way. So I'm going to use a blank sheet of paper right now, and I'm going to show you how I figure out how big to make the paper to make this. So what I start with is, this is my little notebook. I take the notebook to the end of the paper, make a mark. I'm not a big measurer, but this is what I do. And then, so that is 2 times your notebook's width. You know it's going to need to be at least 2 times if you want to wrap it around it. But then you need to account for the sides and gluing or sewing space around it. So what I do is I add 2 inches so that I'll have extra room on both sides. Then I will add 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch to the top. I would say do 1 inch. This will give you a little space at the top and the bottom for your glue, and then just for a nice little bit around each side. So I have all these marks on my paper. What I'm going to do is then I usually take this, take the cutter out, and we'll trim that paper to size. So we got that mark, and then I go this way, and now this will become my template for all the rest of them that I make. And you can see it's not a very hard concept, but that formula really helps to be able to make that pocket that the notepad is going to go in and out of. So then I fold it in half, the wider side. So as you can see, you can see there's quite a bit of room around your notebook. That's what you want. So you have room to glue or sew. Then very simply, I take this and bend this down. Now my paper is very thick, what you want if you're going to put an actual little notebook in there. And I just bend that down there. And I will take a squeegee or a bone folder, anything with a really hard edge, and make sure all those creases are nice and tight. And you can see you're almost basically there. I did make this one a little bit higher, but and you just round your corners. Now if you notice, I did not round the top corner. That's so that if you rounded it, the thread wouldn't catch it quite as nice, or you wouldn't be able to glue it quite as nice up there in that corner. So I think it's better to leave that one a corner. Then I will round this one, And then I just sew or glue all, well, if you're going to sew, I sew all the way around. If you're going to glue, you're going to need to glue here and here. And then you'll want to glue a little bit here to hold that down. But the nice part is, if you don't glue this completely down, you end up with a little pocket or something to... You have a nice little pocket to tuck something in. So you can do that with any size notebook. Now, like I said, mine are pretty thin. If yours was thicker, you might want to add a little more than 2 inches. But that 2 inches is going to give you a nice amount of room to be able to sew or glue. And that notepad is still going to be able to slide in and out. So again, I had my piece of paper. All I did was take that notebook once, twice, and then I added 2 inches so that you'd have that extra space on all sides of the notebook. And then you add a little to the top. Now here I said I added a whole inch. I don't normally add a whole inch, but I just wanted to kind of show you. Like I said, I think it was probably more like 3/4 of an inch. Then you've got a nice little perfect pocket for your notebook. Then with your matchbook, let me show you what I've done here. So I have my one I use as a template. You can tell there's no measurements, just folded paper. But what I use is these small bags from the dollar store. And this idea will work with any size bag. Like here, I've made a larger one and I put little gems in it. Now this bag was quite large, so if you made it that big, it would be really big and then it would be flapping a lot. So I made it, it's bigger than the one for the sequins, but not all the way as big as the bag. But it still works great. So you see I got my little bag here. This bag is almost 3 inches. So first what I did is I bent a 1/4 inch. Well, first I took this and looked, and I wanted you want a little bit of room on each side. So if you look here, which sorry, I bumped the camera. Ooh, really bumped the camera that time. The baggie's almost 2 inches wide, and my paper is about 2.5. What I did in the beginning is just kind of eyeball. First, I knew I needed paper for this, and I wanted to make sure I had extra here so that you can put the staples in and still be able to close. So this is, like I said, about 3/4 of an inch. So at the bottom, I started with 3/4 of an inch. Then I took my bag and I kind of eyeballed it and made sure I had enough room. Then for that little tiny fold, unless you're going to make it really thick, it doesn't need to be all that wide. I only did like 1/4 of an inch. And this is all I did in the beginning. And then I went like this again. And I knew that it had to be slightly less than this. So I made this one almost the size of the bag. And then this would be extra. So here you can see my lines pretty much line up with my paper here. So let's cut this one and do it like Now, I already used this as a template, but I'm showing you this because this is how I figured out the template. Then again, the width, so then I went like this and decided how extra wide I wanted it to be than the little Ziploc bag. So here I left about that much. I mean, so you adjust, and after, like, sometimes they become a little bit larger after a while because of where you're cutting or that. And then I just came back in and scored those fold lines in my end frame. I missed that fold line a little bit, and then that's your end. Then you can fold it. This paper wasn't meant to be scored, but you can see how I came up with the same. It's a little bit less here, and that is about the same as like this one. So I must have started out with slightly wider dimensions or that in the beginning, like here, because I eyeballed. This one is slightly wider. But that's all you really have to do to make a matchbox to fit whatever it is you want to put in there, like the little bags if your bags are bigger. So let me show you how I did it one more time. I knew that I wanted this to be quite large, so I figured an inch was too big, so I do 3/4 of an inch, which I think no matter how big your bag is, 3/4 of an inch is probably fine. Then you took your little bag and made sure you had a little extra room. Let me show it. You have a little extra room at the top, so that little fold comes into play and helps hold everything into place. So at the bottom here, I just stapled my bag in. So I'd make sure I'd get to the bottom. If I had multiple bags, I would clip them together at the top. Make sure my bags were sealed good. And then just come in with a stapler and staple at the bottom. And you want to do it quite low. And then you have your little matchbook. Now you can see, like, sometimes I got higher. In that case, you could cut off a little bit of the bottom of this to then make it fit again, which I've had to do sometimes. But I think it comes out really cute. Like I said, I used the 3 little bags and put different sequins and that in them. But it's really simple, and you could do this with any size notebook or any size little baggie. I think it's rather simple. That's why I just showed you on camera exactly kind of how I made that formula. And as you can see, like, everyone's going to be slightly different. I don't have perfect measurements. I'm not that person who does the perfect measurements. A lot of times at the end, I will take this piece and measure how big it is. Like this one is almost 7 3/4 by just over 2.5 wide. So then I could cut more strips at 7 3/4 and 2.5 wide and know that they were going to work. But most of the time, I keep one as a template to use for later. So like this is my template for the little baggies, and then this is my template for, bump the camera, this is my template for my notebook holders. And this I just usually, like, if I don't have another piece that I haven't folded laying around, I will just take this and double this up against the paper. So, trying to get a piece of paper. So I would take this, then if this is all I have left, and like I said, because I'm not a measure type of person. And if you really, some things you really got to measure. I got to make sure the book fits in there, but that's an easy way to do it. I lost my pencil. An easy way to do it. I don't want to sit there and measure every piece of paper. You know, that's what I'll do, and I'll go like this, and then I'll cut my piece out. I'll just make some little marks. Can you see that? And then I'll just use the straight cutter here to just cut those in straight lines and go about making my pieces. So just to go over it one last time, just in case, I'm going to get a marker and I'm going to show you. This piece of paper should be 2 times the width, 2 times wide, then your notepad, plus 2 inches. Okay, so this is this notebook twice, plus 2 inches. And then, you could add 1 inch to 3/4 an inch at least. So here I've done the notebook. So 1 times the height of the notebook plus 3/4 inch. So that's what you want to do there. 2 times the width of the notebook plus 2 inches. Here's my notebook. 1, 2, plus 2 inches. And then the height, just that, plus 3/4 of an inch. Hold on 1 second, let me clean up some of this. Okay, and then for your baggie, start out with 1/4 of an inch. 3/4 of an inch for your tab, for your first fold. Then take your baggie, and there's where my baggie ends, and I added probably about 1/4 of an inch there. But I just eyeballed. It's a little over 1/4 inch. Here, we want at least 1/4 inch to accommodate our bags. You could make this bigger if your bags were going to be thicker. So this was 1/4 inch, at least 1/4 inch for your fold there. And then this here, again, I just took the bag, and there's just a tiny, if you see my bag ends here, and there's just a tiny bit extra. Now, I recommend leaving that tiny bit extra, but like I've said, sometimes I've had to cut some of that off because of where I put my staples, because I'm leaving it very long in there, if you can see that. There's not a lot of room. But that means if I put my staples too high, I can just cut a little bit of this off, and then it'll go right back in. Like in this case, I've had to do that. See how that staple is very high? I had to come back in and cut a little bit of it off, because you can see it's only going to there. And if you look at this one, it goes way down there. I'm not sure if you can see that. So I hope that explains it to you and gives you an easy way to make your own little matchbox for your Ziploc bags, or your own little folders for your own little notepads. And then like the decoration here, like I used a hole punch to punch a little bow. There's some washi and a sticker, but you could do this any way you want. You could use, you know, paper in the back and do a little collage here or that. I try to keep it kind of simple because I'm usually making a whole bunch at once because I use them as freebies. But I think it comes out real cute. It's something extra. You could actually use this same technique for a lot of other things. Like this would be cute with money tucked in it, inside a card or as the card for Christmas, and just put this in an envelope. If you made one to fit inside the envelope that cash could fit into, that would be really cute. And you could use it just as a pocket to put ephemera in and that. And I do like the little extra bit of pocket here, so you can tuck something in there. I think that's really neat. But it comes out cute, it's simple, and it can be adapted for a lot of different reasons. So I just thought it would be interesting to show you just kind of how to make your own little templates very easily without a bunch of measuring too. I mean, you can use this basic concept for other things. You see how I didn't, measure the bag is 3 inches, let me make it 3 1/4. I just put it there, kind of eyeballed it, and made a template. So I hope that'll give you the courage to kind of try and make your own templates. And, you know, when I started trying to figure out the templates, I used some old paper like this that I had used in the background or were just trying things out on. Like here, I edged my paper here with gold marker and silver marker, and that's what those lines are. And then here I was just messing with the paint to see how the silver and gold paint worked. But so just use something like that as a template in the beginning so you get it where you're happy. I think that just, just give you the courage to try on your own, to make your own little templates. It's really not that hard. It doesn't really involve measuring a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, it is 2 inches, but that is just kind of happened on its own that it was 2 inches wider than the notepad. It was just I played with the paper and see where it folded nice, and it ended up about 2 inches wider. So that's why I give you like the formula for this one. But in the beginning, like I just messed with it a bit to see where it would fit in and out. So I had a couple where I folded them and held them closed and seen how it was going to go, if it was going to go in and out or not, nice and easily. But so I hope that helps. If you have any questions, let me know. I think I did a pretty good job of explaining how I made it, but again, it's not perfection. It's pretty easy, and there's a lot of wiggle room there. Questions, comments, let me know. Thank you. Subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.